Hello, it's Shelley F. Knight, bringing you Positive Changes, a self-kick podcast. So today on the show, we're joined by Kate Griffiths. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Kate.
Hi, it's so lovely to be here. Thank you so much, Shelley, for inviting me to be on here. It's a real honour to be with you.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. Now, I know you've got so many backstories, but please do share the one example of positive change.
So it started 22 years ago, which I can't quite believe when I think back that long. And at the time, I was a director of European Liaison, which is a bit of a grand title. I worked in a university, working both with students and staff, lecturers and academics, and trying to build a European strategy for the university. So very head-based stuff. And I don't know how I did it, but I picked up this book called The Celestine Prophecy. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I have, and I have tried to read it, but it wasn't the book for me. So
Oh, really?
no.
Well, I don't know how I feel about it now, but when I read it 22 years ago, I could not put the book down. And it was like a portal, and it just transformed my life. It took me almost to another world, even though I was, sat in 3D reality in a bedroom somewhere. And I read it to the early hours of the morning, and I was just blown away by what I was reading about. And I think the key phrase in it was something like, your children, the next generation, so when you have children or what have you, or nieces and nephews, they have more knowingness about them than the previous generation. So they are your teachers. And that really rung true for me at that point in time. And then back to what, how you went to South America and just was really basically doing work, sort of like a coach or a healer or, therapist, but working one-on-one with people and running his own business. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that one day. And at that point in time, I had no idea what coaching was or how that would work. So
That's amazing. 22 years ago. And that book as well. Do you know my first catty comment at Mind, Body, Spirit fair it was, Kate? Someone says to me, you must read this book. And I said, oh, I tried it, but it really wasn't for me. And they went, well, you're not going to come to anything in life and you're never going to be spiritual. And I was like, wow. Namaste, sister, namaste. Yeah. So, later on I tried to reread it. Bizarrely, I've got 2 copies of it on my bookshelf. But I love the fact it worked for you. And I think it works for many people, but I'm obviously a bit of a wonky donkey.
No, not at all. So I think that actually is really interesting what you shared there, because I'm on this we're all on a journey. I believe everybody has a spiritual path, but it's not necessarily something they're consciously aware of. But then once you do find that way, then you just get more and more signs and go on that journey. But so anyways, I'm on this journey, and I was reading just recently about intolerance. We all know about that in society. Don't accept difference and people that are a bit different or whatever, and there's judgment. And just like you've just experienced that, with that person, and then the assumptions they made about you. And actually, what's really interesting is when you dive down into it, and we don't sort of take it personally and get into the drama and the story of it. It's like, well, what's going on for that person? And what it is that they're stuck in a place of fear. And so they're projecting their fear on you or on whoever it is that, be that racial prejudice, which is, really current at the moment with Black Lives Matter and all of that kind of stuff. But it's really just deep fear. And so once we acknowledge that fear, whatever is the fear that we have, and we can work with that, then we can transmute it.
Yeah, I believe that. I think that when we meet someone, we get that sort of like intuition coming out, thinking, oh, I love them, or oh no, I don't. There is something that is just being mirrored back to us, isn't there?
Yeah, that's really, I love that phrase. So I work, as you know, with colour, and the system that I work with is called colour mirrors.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
it's called colour mirrors. It's exactly what you've just pointed to. How perfect is that? So in essence, that whatever shows up at your door is just a mirror back to you of stuff that you're working on yourself. So I was really, what came into my consciousness recently is that I've always known I'm spiritual. I'm a Reiki master, do all these things, blend of things, and a colour teacher and so on. And I'm really open about it. But actually, I kept getting clients that also had like a spiritual thing that they did and a more kind of business piece as well. And actually there was some fear for them around really revealing the whole of their spiritual truth, because will I get judged? Will people think I'm some weirdo, or in my tie-dye, or whatever it is? And I thought, actually, that's really fascinating, because then of course you take it into yourself and go, where in my life am I doing that myself, and where do I need to just be even more open about how I talk to people. So I've started consciously talking about the difference between 3D reality and fifth dimension, and what does that mean, and how do you get there? Because I think in our worlds, and you've probably come across a lot of people like this, there are lots of views about what the new way of being is and how the world is changing, but actually when you dig a bit deeper, quite a lot of people haven't got a clue. It's kind of like a wrapper around all the old that they've always done.
Yeah.
And actually what we're being called to is to really stand up and define that. And okay, sometimes maybe say, I don't know, but be at the frontier and pioneering and bringing in all this new stuff.
Yeah, I love it. Where did you, I know you had that absolute clarity 22 years ago, but where did you go from that sort of like that portal in the book that worked for you into being where you are now? What changed?
Well, I think, when we talk about, when people say, oh, we need a revolution, and actually revolutions never work. They might change society for a tiny bit of time, but then it kind of reverts back. You look at like the Russian Revolution, French Revolution, all those things. And I say that because, I had that real moment, and I think you can have breakthroughs and insights, or like Saul on the road to Damascus, but actually it's not sustainable. And so things happen gradually and they start to shift over time. So for a while I still stayed in the job that I was in, and then 3 years later I ended up in a completely different role, working for a top consultancy. I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I thought I'd made it. This was it. I was somebody, and that was a total joke, really. And I realised that fairly quickly. And then and I got married shortly after that. So obviously that was a big change, and that's when I first had Reiki. I didn't even know what Reiki was. I mean, this was back in 2002, and I'm in the Amazon jungle, in this eco lodge, going, yeah, okay, if you want to do that on me, that's fine. It's pretty open. What they were doing, or what, and I was feeling pretty happy anyway because I just got married and I really loved up and all of this business. And then within a year of that happening, I did my first Reiki level 1 training, and then a year after that, I did my Reiki level 2 training. And when I was doing that, that was really fascinating. I'd actually had a miscarriage the year before. And because I was in consulting and it's all about you're only as good as your last job, straight back into work. I never processed the grief at the time. And then this woman before the training said, do you want to have a Reiki session, to have some healing? And I'm always up for that. So I said, yeah, that'd be lovely, And she said, oh, yeah, no, there's all this stuff in your abdomen and all that, because it was all still sort of, like stuck energy in there because I hadn't really processed it. And then when I did the training, I was getting the attunement. So they do these attunements over your head. And I had this really loud voice in my head, and it said, you will come into your power when you become a mother. And I just almost laughed because I was like, yeah, no, at that point in time, my husband wasn't even in the country. So I thought, well, that's not likely to happen. Unless it's the Immaculate Conception. And then I took this period of as to integrate that training and learning, I had like a 30-day detox where I didn't drink any alcohol and stuff like that. And literally I got, spent some time with my husband, and I got pregnant either in that time, so I just thought that was fascinating. And that was when my first daughter was, conceived. But I didn't realize, because I never had morning sickness. And, and then, obviously I did realize I didn't get my period and stuff like that. So that was the next piece of the journey. And then roll on about 3 years, I had 2 children under 2, and I became a qualified coach because I'd found myself in PwC. I was coaching my boss, which was kind of weird, and I didn't really have any tools. I hadn't really, I'd done a bit of basic, coaching 101, didn't know what it was. And I thought, actually, this isn't responsible, so I need to get a model. I need to understand, to make sure that I leave any client in a better place than I found them, sort of thing. So I did this training, and ran my own business for a couple of years back then, but actually really found it hard, because when you start, you don't know how to build a business, if you have, and how to get your clients and stuff like that. But it wasn't so much that, it was more the insecurity of not knowing how much money I was going to make in any given month. And then I got an opportunity to go back to PwC, which I ended up taking. And in that time, I also wrote my first book, which was about the relationship between spirituality and business, because that's what I've always been interested in. So I love all the spiritual stuff, but it has to be practical. How to implement that in the real world. And in the end, I didn't publish it because I felt the energy wasn't right with the 2 men that I wrote the book with. So I took the bits that were mine. And, it was all agreed. We had IP for our own bits. And I said, look, if you want to publish on your own, that's great, but I'm out, sort of thing. And then, as I say, I went back to PwC, and I thought, right, this is it, because I was doing much more stuff about supporting people's growth and learning. So a bit, so that felt really good. And then within 2 years, I'd left because I suppose I had another turning point. I got really, really ill. Ended up being in a women's hospital in Warsaw while I was running a global leadership development program. And I just knew it was that I wasn't meant to be here. I couldn't make this really very left-brained organization become spiritual, on my own. That wasn't my job to do. So I manifested a redundancy package, took 6 months off because I had to get rid of all the toxicity, because it was very fear-based. Just let it out of my body. And then I set up my own business, Whole Self Leadership. And I had one rule, which was I'm not going to do anything unless it's fun. I'd had a few years of, life being quite stressful in some ways. And so that was my only rule. And it's sort of grown from there. And then 6 or 7 years ago, I got into colour, and I became a colour practitioner, which meant I could help heal people through using colour. And then in 2016, I went to South Africa, and I trained with the founder of our system, a woman called Melissa Jolly, and became a colour teacher. So I can now teach other people how to use colour and how to bring that modality into whatever other, tools and work that they're doing. But it's really, in essence, a tool to help raise consciousness. And it goes back to something you said, I think, right at the beginning. I think all of our ills in society, people talk about dis-ease, and that comes from, it starts really with not being content with where you are in any given moment. Oh, I need this, I need more money, or I need more to be, more visible or have more impact, all of these things. And that causes a certain level of, something's not right. And if you don't manage that, then it can actually become, mental illness, or, you get depression and what have you, all of these different things. And actually the first thing we're called to do is just to go, yeah, it's good where I am, and just, count our blessings and see what we already have, because we have so much. And then when we're in that heightened state of awareness, then so much more comes to us. Almost, it's sort of counterintuitive really, but that's what I think, one of the things that I've learned over time. And there have been times when it's been really tough, and there's been lots going on in my life, which is the same for everybody. But I think the distinction is, what tools do we have that can help us to bounce back? So we might get stuck in the drama, but then how quickly do we notice that, and how quickly do we shift how we feel about what's going on?
Yeah. Do you sort of practice gratitude or mindfulness? And I ask this because in mindfulness, we're often told sort of like, bring it back to where you are now, even if you don't like where you are now. It's just being, you're alive. The fact you're alive, you can feel that you don't like life, but be grateful that you're here. Be grateful that, you can see, hear, things like that. So do you practice gratitude and mindfulness in your work?
Yeah, to a degree. So I used to teach mindfulness. That was the first thing I did when I set my business up in 2012.
Oh, okay.
To run mindfulness classes, weekly classes for people, or do one-to-one sessions with them. So that was really important. And I think where I've got to now, I now run, in marketing speak, my entry-level product is what I call Heart Connections. And it's sort of a blend. One of my strengths, Shelley, is that I'm a blender. So I blend all the different traditions and ideas that I've picked up or read about or integrated into my own beingness, and then weave that into my work. So now when I call what I do, it's almost like a contemplation. And let me explain what I mean by that. So you've got mindfulness, if you like, or meditation on one side, and that's very much a yin type of thing. So it's about being and letting go, and just coming out of your mind. Yeah. So it's a very much a sort of feminine thing. And then on the other side, you've got what might be called concentration, which is very much the yang energy, the masculine energy. So it's, if I keep doing these yoga poses or this martial arts or whatever, and I perfect it, I might suddenly get to enlightenment. And there's a lot of effort in that, and it's hard work, and it's about applying it every day. And actually, what I believe is that there's a middle way, which I call contemplation, which is a blend of both. So you need the stillness, which you can get through mindfulness or meditation. But it's also then, where do I want to direct my attention onto what theme or what idea, and what insights might that give me by doing that? And so that's what I do. And obviously I weave in colour and help people to understand things using that, because I think what colour really helps people with is to get out of their head, because the head is what causes, the mind, if you like, is what causes all the challenges that we have. Because quite often people think they can read their way out of an issue, or if I just have more knowledge. Actually, we don't need knowledge, we need wisdom. And wisdom comes from building the intuitive muscle that we have inside ourselves. But many people don't pay much attention to that, or don't trust it. And that's when things start to go wrong.
See, I love that you work with colour. I did colour therapy. I don't even know how many years ago, Kate.
Oh,
before I had children, so 14 years ago. And all I remember is things like you can eat your colours, can't you? Like eat the rainbow. So if you're feeling unbalanced in life, you'd eat lots of red things for your root chakra and things like that. But I do still use it with my children, actually. So they've been quite anxious of late. And so I get them to choose a colour for the day. So like say, choose the colour orange. And when they have those like wobbly moments during the day, just find something orange somewhere. And so I'd still use it, but probably not to your depth. So how can people use colour in their day-to-day life?
So I would say, I mean, it was funny actually, because I wrote an article about 2 or 3 years ago for Psychologies Today, the magazine.
Yeah.
And they really wanted to boil it down like that, to, okay, so what can our readers do? Can they wear magenta coloured knickers? And I'm like, well, can, but I doubt that'll have much of an impact. So I know if people are listening to this, they won't see this, but colour mirrors is based on a set of bottles. There was a previous system called Aurosoma, which still exists, with square or rectangular bottles, and we would say that was the masculine because it's like straight lines. Whereas obviously, as you can see, colour mirrors bottles are flat on the bottom so they can stand up, but they're like a semicircle, so they represent the feminine. And they're made up of oil and water and natural vegetable dyes. And I actually think it's really important to work with the bottles. And the reason I say that is because if you know about epigenetics, basically, well, what you will know is, you know, every day we're born anew, we're a new person, because we're not the set, you know, some of our cells have died, new cells have come in their place in parts of our body. And in a way, colour facilitates that. So when you sit in a bath with these, you know, the colour water, it kind of charges into your cells and it shifts. Because sometimes, you know, you can say to people, don't be depressed, but I mean, it's a bit like saying, don't think about pink elephants. What do you think about pink elephants, for heaven's sake? You know, I mean, it's not going to help anyone. Or you need to be more confident. What the heck does that mean when somebody says that to a child or an adult or somebody? It's just nuts. And I think, in a way, what colour does, working with colour, it helps people find their playful side, whether they're an adult or a child. We all love to play and just have fun and get engrossed in the colours. So if people haven't got access to, well, there's two things I'd say. So then there's also what's really great for children, because you mentioned your children, and mine are 14 and 13, so there's probably a similar ages, but you get these set of mini chakra oils, so they're like in a box, and the little roll-ons. It's really not expensive at all, and also it's a set that has all the colours of the chakras, so from red to magenta, and then they have it, and it's just like, if they're feeling out of sorts, stressed or upset or a wobble, as you were saying, you just go to them and go, you pick the colour that you want. Because if we say it's orange or it's this, then we're imposing our view. And they might want a different colour, and that's fine. And then where do you want to roll it on? You decide. You know, it could be on your wrist or on your part of your face or another part of your body. It doesn't matter because it's yours. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I would recommend. Or these lovely spritzers. I mean, this one is sort of almost platinum in colour, and I chose it because it's got little copper sparkly bits in it, and copper is really good for grounding. So if you're feeling a bit, you know, just ground.
Frequently, Kate, frequently. I'm a bit of a spacey kid.
So actually what you need is lots of copper. Help you ground back down to earth and just relax. Or red, copper or red, because they're very earthy colours, and it just brings you back. And I notice you've got red in your shirt, so that's good.
Yes.
No, so you can obviously, if you're not working with the system, you know, you can consciously choose what colours you wear, and it's important that you choose what works for you. Do you know what I mean? Because intuitively, you know. But if you really want to shift, I think it helps to work with the system, because you just start, you know, it's energy. And I think it's like Einstein said, or is purported to have said, you can't change something at the same energy at which it was created. And that's what's so beautiful about the system, because it just takes you out of yourself. So, I mean, I've worked with people, for example, that have been sectioned, because mental illness really, I think, is misnamed. It's not mental health, it's emotional health. And what causes people often to tip over the edge is extreme feelings of emotion, you know, sadness, grief, anger, fear, all those things. And it's actually, well, you need to just release those, or allow them to pour through you, rather than going, I don't want to feel this, or try and distract yourself or numb yourself, because ultimately that will be your undoing.
See, I saw that years ago. My mum will remember this. She's still slightly like upset by it. But I just qualified as a nurse. So this is like 2004. And we had to do a presentation to like the head of medicine and things like that at the hospital. So I'd noticed that we always had so many alcoholics on the medical ward, and they'd come in, they'd love the connection, food, all that kind of thing. And we'd give them this like drying out medicine package, you know, take these tablets for so many days, wean them off kind of thing. And then we'd set them back out, often to a homeless, you know, no fixed abode. And then within a 3-month cycle, they would come back. And so my presentation was very badly received, because I challenged and said that we shouldn't be giving them tablets. We should be giving them emotional support. We should be saying, we know you drink, but why? What was the trigger? What was your first emotion?
Yeah.
And the head of nursing, she said, like, a bit like the Celestine Prophecy ladies, just like, well, you're not going to get anywhere in your nursing career, because we have no problems with alcoholics. Do you know what I mean? They just drink because they drink. And this is going back like decades. And then it was like fast forward like 6 months or a year, and it was on Anglia News. And it said about how many millions alcoholic like tendencies cost the NHS. And it's not that I'm labeling it for the cost. What I'm saying is it's the emotional health. Like, you know, you don't just choose to drink. There's a reason why you're drinking. There's a reason why you're not eating or binge eating or going for that bad relationship. We don't just have these behaviors for the sake of having them. There is that emotion that needs to come out, that voice that needs to be heard, you know, something that needs to be healed. So I totally get where you're coming from, that you know, emotional health is lovely, because there is the term emotional health, but it's often different to mental health. They don't use it as the same, do they?
And I think it's just a misunderstanding. And you know, if we understand that, you know, in many ways we're very, if we go sort of chunk up a bit, you know, back in, we had the Enlightenment in the 18th century, right? Well, there's nothing really very enlightening about it. Descartes saying, I think, therefore I am. And in that moment, he severed the mind-body connection. And for me, what I would call the old paradigm, but for many is still the current paradigm, it's where, you know, what was the impact of that? Well, we don't need religion. Now, I'm not advocating religion, but it was kind of the separation of church and science, you know, and it's like, well, you know, science became the new God effectively, and everything had to be proven, and that, you know, and it was like, well, what's the hypothesis and how do you know that works, you know? And then it's like working at PwC, you know, if you couldn't measure it, it didn't exist. But what we forgot in embracing that paradigm was the role of mysticism.
Yeah.
And actually, we don't necessarily understand everything. And as Arthur Kessler said many years ago, magic is the science we don't understand yet. And we're already seeing those shifts. So if you go back, you know, you probably were around as I was 20 odd years ago, there were maybe 3 books in a bookshop about mind, body, spirit. Now you probably get at least 3 shelves full of the stuff. Yeah. You know, there never used to be many MBS events. There's now thousands. You know, you can get acupuncture on the NHS. Cancer patients can often get Reiki on the NHS. So there is this recognition, but we still haven't healed up that schism, if you like. You know, there's still that separation. And that's, you know, for some people, there's the recognition that we've now moved into the age of Aquarius from the age of Pisces. And now it's about basically bringing those 2 aspects together, healing it together, and saying, yes, they need to coexist. Yeah. And that comes through bringing in the mysticism. And some people would say that will be the role of the magician from the tarot, you know, just comes and brings in divine will, because that's what's needed now, and that understanding.
See, I like to think that we've all got magic within us. And I know people will roll their eyes, and that's okay by me. But I do think that we all hold a magic power within us, and we can tap into all of that. You know, we can't prove it, but I just think we all have this great power within us. And I love that. But as we were saying about the disease, I went from nursing to clinical hypnotherapy. And in my clinical hypnotherapy, I started to see the people, when they went through a trauma, whether that's past life or current life, they would have like the physical memory as well as the emotional memory. And so I can see how it's all together. We can't prove anything, but you do see patterns in life. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, does it?
Absolutely, Shelley. That's exactly it. And everyone, I would say, everyone on the planet is far more powerful than most of them realise. You know, and that's the journey we're on, is to recognise, well, you can, you know, yes, we've created money as a source of energy, for example, or, you know, a way to pay for things, but we're the only species that has to do that in this world, you know, sort of find something to do and that we can be paid for. You know, actually we have a value in and of ourselves, and we need to remember that. And it's, I suppose it's just that whole piece around, yeah, you can get stuck in what I call third dimensional reality, which is really, oh, how am I going to pay the bills? What am I going to do for a living? And all of that stuff. And how am I going to pay the school fees, or, you know, pay for my kids' pair of shoes? And I'm not saying that isn't an issue for people, but it's always going to be there. There's always, you know, you're always going to have to buy food each week because that's what we've set up. Or you can just go, do you know what? Yeah, that's there. And I trust in my ability to find a way to make money. And I'm choosing to live my life at a higher level. It's much more fun to be on the fifth dimension, to be honest. It's like, what do I want to create? How do I want to be? You know, what's my relationship with oneness or the universe or whatever? And that might sound a bit out there for people, but it's actually the truth of it. You know, we are powerful beings of light. And I think it was Marianne Williamson or Nelson Mandela, and it was then linked to her, but they both sort of said something along the lines of, you know, we're not afraid of the darkness. We're actually afraid of our own power and the light that we are. But once we've found that and we shine it, we are then allowing others to shine their light.
Yeah, I know that quote. I love it. I wanted it in my office, about like we sort of like darken down our sparkle almost. And it's not because, you know, we don't want to upset others. Actually, we're scared of, like, we create our own fears about ourselves and our amazing potential. So yeah, I love that quote. So bless you, your positive change, it's been quite interesting because you sort of like had this real clarity like 20 odd years ago. Then you went to PricewaterhouseCoopers, then you went back and in and out, you know, and that's what I think is a really valuable message today, is that, you know, we do zigzag. It's not like linear, is it? You know, that you might step forward, then go back. But the key thing for you, it seems, is to have fun on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And also not to take any of it too seriously. You know, we're all perfectly imperfect, so we're all going to make a mess of it sometimes. That's part of human condition, and that's okay. But, you know, just, and also it's like, what's right for me won't necessarily be right for you, you know. So it's just, the only thing you have to worry about is your own impeccability by your own standards, you know what I mean? And because I think that, going back to the piece around the light and being afraid to shine our light, part of that is this fear of wanting to belong. And because we want, you know, we all want connection and to belong, and so we want to fit in, so we conform in order to fit in as with what we see society as. Whereas actually it's like, you know, we're all unique. Just get on and paddle your own canoe, and the people that like what you've got to say will find you.
Yeah, I love that. And I say that quite a lot. Like, you know, the world is quite scary. It can be overwhelming. It can be very judgmental. It can be lots of things. But I think also we can just take it back to our own little inner world. You know, your story started beautifully about this intuitive moment like 20 odd years ago. And so sometimes we can just draw it back to our own inner world, can't we?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as you, like, in your own journey, like, you know, you started off in a caring profession, nursing, and then you moved to clinical hypnotherapy, and you've been on that journey yourself, because that's it. As we learn more about ourselves, or even actually unlearn, because it's a lot of deconstruct, you know, that's the other reason I like colour, because it's going into the subconscious programmings that we don't even know is there, but actually is running the software, and going, no, that's not what I want anymore. I need to shift that and actually make those choices. So we unlearn all those things. And then as we step into our power, that it's like a stone going into the middle of a pond, and then it ripples out and touches all these other people. And we don't always know who's being touched by our message. And that's okay too.
Yeah. Bless you. I've absolutely loved this. Thank you so much. I love the message of intuition. You've got the corporate in there, the spiritual. I love it. But I think, the fun thing, I think that's really key, isn't it? Like, have fun while we're here.
Yeah, because before you know it, you're gonna be dead. It's awful, but it comes to us all, and no one's gonna say, "How often did you clean your house? Did you put all your affairs in order?" Who cares? Did you have a rip-roaring laugh and a few drinks with your mate? Great,
I love that. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed today's episode, please ensure you subscribe and do leave a positive review. If you would like to create your own positive changes, head on over to shelleyfknight.com and you can buy yourself a copy of Positive Changes, a self-cookbook. If you want some positivity until the next show, come join us over on Facebook. That's Shelley F. Knight, Life Goes On. So I've been Shelley F. Knight, and as always, you've been amazing.